Hi everyone, my name is Masooma and I'm the coordinator for APNOR. I would like to use this opportunity to thank everyone for joining today's webinar. There are a few logistic which I would go through quickly before I hand over to Najeeba, our executive director. A recording of the webinar will be made available soon after the webinar ends, and a link will be sent to register participation. The webinar will also be broadcast via Facebook Live through APNOR Facebook page. So please use the QA function box to ask questions or make any comments as speakers present. I also encourage everyone to use the chat box to introduce yourself as we start the program. I would like to now hand over to Najeeba, who is our founding member and executive director of APNOR. She will be telling us about what and why we have this webinar today and goes through to the detail of the campaign. So down to you, Najeeba.
Thank you very much, Masooma. I was just wondering if you could share your screen while I'm speaking. The PowerPoint, Masooma, before I go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
Can you try? Sorry, we're just going to be with you in 2 minutes. Just seeing if we can get the PowerPoint up.
You go to my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to share the PowerPoint, Masooma?
Okay.
Yep, that was right, Masooma.
Yes. Can you see my screen?
No. It's okay. I'll try myself. That's fine. I think you can see my screen now, right?
Yeah, we can see your screen, Najeeba.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Nibras. Okay, now that we knew that we're going to have some technical issues as usual, and I do appreciate your patience. Once again, I would like to thank you just the same way as my colleague Masooma did. My name is Najeeba, for those of you who I haven't been able to meet in the past. I'm a former refugee from Afghanistan, and I'm currently based in Australia. It is really my honor and privilege to really thank you all for joining us today for launching the webinar on Education Empowers Refugees. It is a very special moment for myself and my colleagues in APNOR for being able to launch this campaign. As you know, as some of you might be aware, we have been working along for the past few months in ensuring that the voices of refugees are not only represented at national level, but also at regional level. So today what I'm actually planning to do before I pass it on to my colleagues who are going to have much more conversation around, why exactly did we run this campaign and what are some of the barriers and challenges to give you a bit of information around the campaign itself. So as you can see, I'm just having some. I would like to run you first and talk about the campaign itself. Education is the key to development. That's something that myself and refugee communities have realized. Educating refugees is the best investment that countries can make to boost human development. It is really the key to empowerment. The Asia-Pacific region in particular hosts the largest number of refugees and displaced people in the world. And it is the place of origin, basically, for nearly half of all international migrants. Just recently, we've been reading a global report on the education of refugee children around the world, titled Coming Together for Refugee Education. There was an analysis for the Asia-Pacific region where UNHCR highlighted that in countries covered by that report, in the Asia region, only 32% of primary school age refugee children attend formal primary education. We all know that the right to education is one of the most fundamental human rights, yet many of the world's children face challenges in accessing education. These challenges are exacerbated for children who are predominantly from refugee or asylum seeker background or stateless people. Across Asia, and again, you will be hearing from my colleagues who are on the ground, many refugee children, youth, women and girls face difficult challenges to access education, in particular financial challenges, which prevent them from attending schools or continuing their tertiary education or having some informal education where possible. Additionally, children in refugee camps, women and girls in refugee camps, other refugees in camp-like situations frequently live in precarious conditions where education has been very much limited. And again, I'm not going to talk much around the challenges and the barriers of education that our refugee communities are facing across Asia, because we're going to have a panel discussion where people are going to talk directly from the field, people that are now people that are still in the camp, people that are working in learning centers with these challenges and trying to respond to these challenges. And they will be at a much more legitimate place to actually talk of these barriers and bring you up to date with the challenges that refugees face when it comes to education. So basically, we've been hearing in APNOR in particular by our colleagues from different countries in the Asia region that school structures are often very basic. Classes are provided in an informal way. The COVID pandemic has hit refugees even harder. Many children, youth, women and girls have been isolated as a result of the pandemic itself. Education itself was already a difficult phenomenon for our people, for refugees, for asylum seekers, for stateless people, but things have become much more difficult due to the COVID pandemic. Across Asia, as I said, we've heard that the COVID-19 outbreak has severely affected the learning environment of refugee children, youth, women, and girls. And these are some of the in the light of above challenges, we in APNOR decided that we want to put together Education Empowers Refugees campaign and to call for continuous support, from host countries and partners and NGOs and friends and colleagues to join their effort with us in APNOR to improve, refugees' access to education. So this is the reason that we've put together this campaign named Education Empowers Refugees. And as I said, today is one of is an important day as we are launching this. To tell you a little bit around this campaign, maybe what I can ask, can people mute themselves? Or Masooma, can you mute people so that people can hear us well? So if people are not speaking, if we could ask you to mute yourself, thank you, so that we can hear each other well. So if I have to tell you a little bit about the campaign, it is an Asia-Pacific advocacy campaign where we are hoping to promote quality of and access to education for refugees across Asia-Pacific countries, for forcibly displaced people, and for refugees that are living in host communities. We are hoping that through this campaign, we are able to support funding and really do a resource mobilizations to refugee-led organizations in particular that have been supporting education needs for refugee communities for long decades. We're hoping that through the campaign, we are able to promote partnership, collaboration, and engagement among refugee-led organizations with the wider stakeholders. And in that, we're looking to increase, much more awareness within the with donors, with INGOs, specifically those that are working within the education sector. At the same time, what we realize is that it's quite important to increase public awareness and advocacy for refugee education, especially for women and girls, children and youth. And lastly, to foster safe, enabling environment that support learning for all students, regardless of their legal status, gender, or disability. So this is why we are actually running the campaign. Our key, there are 4 key areas of work which this campaign is hoping to achieve and to do. As you can see, the first thing that we really want to do through this campaign is to amplify refugee-led voices. Through the campaign, what we are hoping to do, and maybe something that I did miss to say at the start, this campaign is going to run from today up to World Refugee Day in June, going towards the end of June. For this period, what we are hoping to do is to amplify refugee-led voices, sharing refugee-led promising practices around education. We've been working with so many refugee-led learning centers. We've been working with a lot of refugee-led women groups who have been doing amazing work around educational support, especially at the most challenging time of COVID pandemics. So our hope is that during this campaign, we are able to showcase and bring you some of those good practices, which have been under-recognized, which has been under-resourced, but still doing very good job and still having very good outcome. The second key area of focus for us through this campaign is that, we want to increase engagement amongst refugee-led organization and the wider stakeholder. As some of you might be aware, one of the key principle and action from the Global Compacts on Refugees and the Global Refugee Forum was, to promote whole of society approach. And in order to promote that whole of society approach, we are actually trying to get rid of the bridge that exists among refugee-led organizations and the other wider stakeholders, whether it's government, whether it's non-government organizations or INGOs or donors or educational academics. So what we are hoping to do is that, or what we are hoping to achieve is that through this campaign, we're actually going to call all of our friendly allies and colleagues and friends and stakeholders to join a refugee education interest group. So what we are hoping to do is that, again, we're not going to be able to support, we're not going to be able to do this work on our own. And we do understand that the challenges and the needs to education is quite high. And when we talk to our colleagues in Thai-Burma border, when we talk to our refugee communities in Indonesia or Malaysia or elsewhere in Asia region. So what we are hoping is to increase and maximize partnership and engagement with the wider stakeholders. And we are only able to do this if we are going to have much more of an ongoing sustainable relationship, with these stakeholders, where they can get to know our refugee-led organizations and they can create much more of a partnership role. So hopefully, through this campaign, we are able to have universities joining our refugee education interest group, INGOs, donors, and governments, and whoever is interested, basically, to create a change in education space for refugee communities. The third thing that we are hoping to do through this campaign is resource mobilization to refugee-led organization. What we have realized is that one of the biggest challenge that our refugee communities, refugee leaders and experts are facing at special moments is the lack of investment and the lack of direct funding to their educational projects or to their educational learning centers. We have a lot of refugee-led learning centers that we're working with across Asia region, and many of them are still struggling to cover the cost of the expense expenses, getting from enrollment to rental venue to electricity and bills, to books and pens, to internet access, and so on. So what we have done is actually that we have, as we are launching this webinar today, we're also going to launch a fundraising website where we're going to ask and seek for your kind donation in reaching our target goal for this campaign, and where that donation will be then used directly to support those refugee learning centers across Asia. And the fourth thing that we are hoping to achieve through this campaign is advocacy and diplomacy. And that's quite important when we talk to our governments, when we talk to our, policy change makers. What we have realized again, APNOR was honored to be part of the Global Refugee Forum. When we attended the Global Refugee Forum, we realized that there was not enough pledges made to the Global Refugee Forum in relation to education commitments from Asia Pacific region in particular. We came across only about, if I'm not wrong, around 10 pledges in total, 10 pledges that were predominantly made by some of the governments in the region, and there was really lack of commitments by donors and by governments in ensuring that education was going to be accessible to refugees, to refugee youth, children, women, and girls across Asia. So what we are hoping to do is to have much more bilaterals and advocacy plan and policy papers in ensuring that, again, there is a clear pathway, there's much more commitment and pledges coming forward to the next Global Refugee Forum, where there is much more consistent and sustainable promises made by governments. So we're looking at ways of changing national curriculums for some for refugees. We are hoping that we can look at ways that education can become much more inclusive at national and local level as well. So that's the kind of advocacy and diplomacy that we are hoping to achieve by working along with our partners and colleagues. Maybe I have to tell you a little bit more around the background to the campaign as to why we really started this campaign and what made APNOR and its leaders to really look at, launching or working towards Education Empowers Refugees campaign. The Asia Pacific Network of Refugees have been running national consultations for the past year at least. We've had national consultation in Indonesia, in Malaysia, in New Zealand, in Japan, in Korea, in Bangladesh, in Cox's Bazar, and a few other countries. And throughout of each of these country consultations with refugee communities, we came across the lack of commitment to education for refugees. In every country consultation that APNOR has taken till today, there were clear trends of education issues, not only for youth and children, but also for women and girls. There were clear recommendations of, seeking support for education. So this is one of the reasons that, we in APNOR, along with our members and our community leaders, we decided that it's quite important to respond to education needs, which we see basically at almost every country that we've had consultations so far. And most of our country consultation reports are available. And for those of you who are interested to have access to these reports, please feel free to share your email with us or email Masooma, and we're happy to share those reports with you. And you will be able to see in each of the reports, again, there are clear mentioning of education issues and barriers, and there are strong evidence of how education can change the lives of refugees, not only at the country when they get resettled, but also at the country of transit, at the places where they're still seeking asylum. And there's very clear urge from the communities to support and improve education access for them. The second reason that we actually put this campaign together is that last year, APNOR actually ran a survey with refugee-led organizations. It was a survey that we actually sent to all our colleagues, individuals, and refugee-led organizations, and we really asked them to prioritize, in which area do they actually think there needs to be a greater advocacy, or there needs to be a greater amount of work through APNOR APNOR, you know, where APNOR could support the community much more better. The survey was completed by almost 100 refugee-led organizations across the Asia-Pacific region. And again, the survey clearly indicated that one of the highest needs that refugee youth, children, women and girls are facing is again education needs. There was a lot of requests, you know, for informal education. There was a lot of requests made through the survey, you know, for mentoring. There was a lot of requests made through the survey, you know, to ensure that their refugee-led learning centers are supported, that there's advocacy and leadership trainings are available, that they have access to equipment, they have access to internet, they have access to scholarships. So there was a lot of, conversation made on education, even through the survey. So that was the second reason, which basically made us to plan and think stronger for launching this campaign and naming it Education Empowers Refugees, because this is exactly what each person told us in the consultations that we did last year, and it's still continuing, and also in the survey. I think it was almost 10 to 20 times quoted in many different reports that the empowerment is education. So if we are to empower refugees, it is through education. And this is the strongest reason which basically became the rationale behind this campaign, and basically motivated myself and my colleagues from APNOR to run and to launch the campaign today. And maybe I can't, okay. What I would, so now that you know why we are actually doing the campaign, and I've given you a bit of information around, you know, some of the rationale behind the campaign, what I'm going to do now is basically to hand over to my other colleagues from APNOR, who has been working quite hard with me and Masooma and others in ensuring that, you know, we are able to look at, you know, different pathways to ensure that education can become accessible to our communities across the region. So with that, I would like to call on Shukrullah Danish, who's also another respectful member of APNOR from the steering committee, who's going to talk more about the impacts of education across the Asia region, and tell us a little bit more about the campaign. Down to you, Shukrullah.
Hi, this is Najeeba. So today I'm going to explain something about my refugees' life. So I am from Bangladesh, Cox's Bazar refugee camps, the largest refugee camps who fled from Myanmar to Bangladesh. So today we have been facing many challenges about education. There is no formal education and no formal access to education.
I'm sorry. I think I am seeing someone else speaking. I would like. Probably we have another Shukrullah in the audience, but this is for Shukrullah Danish. Yeah, Shukrullah, if you don't, sorry, I think we will have more time for those who actually wants to speak from the audience, but we would like to go through the presentation by colleagues who have been prepared to talk about the campaign. So maybe to the other Shukrullah who was actually speaking just right now, I do apologize to stop you, and maybe to ask my APNOR colleague Shukrullah Danish to unmute yourself as you're muted, and basically start the presentation. Down to you, Shukrullah. You're muted, Shukrullah. You're still muted.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you, Shukrullah.
Okay. Thank you, Najeeba, for giving me the floor. Thank you, Najeeba, for giving me the floor. Hello, distinguished speakers and outstanding people who are watching us on social media now. My name is Shukrullah Danish. I'm a human rights activist. I'm one of the Afghan refugee representatives in India. And also I'm a member of the steering committee of Asia Pacific Network of Refugees for a couple of years. And really we have had a very fruitful discussion so far that we have been working with APNOR. It is my great pleasure and honor to be a part of this initiative program and have this opportunity to speak about education, about its impacts on the lives of individuals, families, societies. I would like to talk about the education from the human rights perspective. Education is a right. The right of education is reserved for human beings anytime, anywhere that people are living anywhere in the world, irrespective of in which ethnic you belong to, in which language you're talking, which color you have, which country you belong to, what is your religion, what is your gender, or what is your political and other opinions. Either you are poor or rich, and it doesn't matter that if you are a refugee or you are the original resident of the host countries. The education is remain with you, and no one has the right to deprive you from the education. I strongly believe that there is no difference between the human beings. And what really makes changes to our lives and also to our society is the education. So education is very important because it is one of our fundamental rights in our life. So what is education? Basically, education is a transfer of information, skills, techniques, and also experience to the individual. And the purpose of education is basically to bring the natural talents and ability to the verb. And also education makes aware the people, all the people, irrespective of any other issues, make people aware from their rights, from their duties, from their responsibilities to the family, to the community, to the society, and also to the nations. So the modern society is based on the people who have the high education. Those who are with the high level of education, the education basically allows them to fight against injustice, against violence, and against corruption, and many other aspects and the elements in the society. So, as you know that, what a good sentence or what a good message Nelson Mandela has given regarding the education. He said that education is the most powerful weapon that you can use to change the world. Therefore, education is very important for all the people, especially those who are, I think, asylum, like refugees, children of refugees, youths, especially women and girls. As you know, the human being are a social phenomena. They need to have collaboration. They need to have coordination between them. They need to be united among them to solve their problems and also to work together to solve the problem in the society. This is possible only if each and everyone is educated in the society. The more you have educated people in your society, the more you can have an ideal society. If you don't have the people are educated, it means that we are not able to have a good planning, we are not able to have a good human resources, and we will be facing a lot of problems. Now I'm coming to the refugees. So refugees are the real parts of the society, and they should not be, and they should be treated as the other people are treated in the society. Refugees should have access to the education system from the primary to the higher education, because they need education to develop themselves, as the education determines the future of human beings. And the more you study, the more you can be useful and effective in your society. Refugees need jobs, opportunity to work, to support their family in general, especially particularly in education. Refugees are supposed to contribute positively in the society. Maybe they are living anywhere in the world. Therefore, refugees are supposed to be supported, and they should be, I think, counted and accepted as a real part of the society. and also the official of the relevant government and also the institution are supposed to support them and to help them in many sectors of life, especially in the education sectors. I think there should be very much collaboration between the UNHCR office and also the relevant government department. As much as I have good collaboration regarding the problems and challenges of the refugees, then there will be a good coordination regarding the education. Because if you are not raising the problems and challenges of the refugees in many fields of life, especially in the education sectors, then the authorities or maybe the officials of the government, especially the higher education, they will not be aware of what the problems are going on and what the problems refugees have. So that is a need that there should be someone who are advocating for the refugees, who are highlighting all the problems and challenges refugees are facing, especially in the field of education, particularly for the children and also for the youth and for the women and girls, to highlight it and share it with the high authority. They should know the problem, but they will start to make the solution for that. So if you are not communicating regarding these issues, and if you are not, for example, highlighting these issues, if you're not addressing the problems with the high authorities or with the relevant department, then nobody will know that what is the problems or what is the challenges they are facing. So that is why at this stage, if we are not paying attention, if the United Nations, the UNHCR office or maybe the relevant Department of Education department and the government, they are not paying attention to the refugees, there will be a lot of problems. I'm sure that refugees are living in a society, there will be a negative impact in the life of the other people as well. Because, for example, if your neighbor is suffering from many kind of problems, for example, they are not able to go to school, and they are not able to go to university, and they are not able to be educated, then they will be jobless people. Then what will they do? For sure, they will create a lot of problems for their neighborhood. So this is the reason that in case if our neighbor is suffering from any problem, then we cannot accept it. And then it's not in terms of humanly and in terms of emotionally, so that's not a good idea. That is why that we are supposed to hear, and we are working for the education campaign for refugee, children of refugee, youth, and especially women and girls, that there should be a special attention on the education of the people in other countries, especially in the Asian countries. So in this area, that is what all I could tell to you. I could share, and maybe we can share another more information on our panel. So thank you for your kind attention. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Darius for the next step. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Shukrullah, for your sharing and presentation. It's really brilliant. And thank you everyone for being here today. Myself, I'm Darius, and I'm from Togo. I'm a former asylum seeker based in Hong Kong, and now I'm currently a Hong Kong resident. And I'm also part of the steering committee of APNOR, and also one of the co-founder of one refugee-led organization right here in Hong Kong called Replete Hong Kong. So I believe that you all agree with me, as Najeeba mentioned a little bit earlier in her presentation, that education is the foundation of all human development, right? So this is very fundamental, for us refugees and asylum seekers, to pave our way to self-development and self-reliance, and therefore enabling ourselves meaningfully and sustainably contribute to society. And this is what brought us all together today. And we are very, very much honored, to have speakers who are actually steering committee members of APNOR, and also people who are doing amazing work within their various refugee communities, across the Asia Pacific. So to start with, let's welcome Hayso. And Hayso is actually a refugee activist and a peace worker currently situated at the Thai-Burma border. And he currently serves as Education and Livelihood Coordinator at current Refugee Committee and Chair of Refugee Affairs at the current Peace Support Network. So beside this, he also served in different capacities such as student and youth empowerment, leading advocate at current student network group, and helping students and researchers on refugee issues. He helped to organize stakeholder meeting, inviting local refugee community leaders, NGOs, INGOs, UN agencies, and donors to discuss on refugee supports, preparedness, and refugee engagement in ethnic and refugee students and teachers' rights through regular consultation. The second speaker is Naweed from Indonesia. Just to clarify a little bit, Hayso is based in Thailand. Yeah, so and Thai-Burma border. So coming back to Naweed, he's based in Indonesia, and Naweed has actually been a TV news presenter and a news editor with over 5 years of experience. He has played a major role in creating education opportunities for asylum seekers in Indonesia, while himself being a refugee. He's also the project manager and operation manager for 9 years at a refugee-led learning center in Bogor, Indonesia, which is named Hope Learning Center. Now, the third speaker is Isack. Isack is based in Malaysia. So Isack has been working with refugee communities doing advocacy work and lobbying for resettlement and inclusive education for refugees since his arrival in Malaysia as an asylum seeker, and he's also leading and supporting the operation of refugee-led learning center in Malaysia. The fourth speaker is Mohammed from Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. So he's a peace builder as well as a strong advocate who has been fighting for the rights and justice of Rohingya refugees for a long time. He has supported the establishment of APNOR Rohingya Refugee Think Tank Group, and also one of the leaders of Rohingya Youth Association Network. The fifth speaker is Nibras, who is based in Australia. So Nibras is a refugee from Assyrian Iraq background. She has been working on refugee women leadership and empowerment for a long time. She has been mentoring youth refugee women with career development, especially into public life, and also supported women to establish businesses and help them build economic independence. She's also a consultant and graduate of migration law. The sixth and last speaker is Shukrullah, who actually has already introduced himself, so I won't be going over his bio or his presentation anymore. So one thing quickly is that just to let you guys know that we have about 1 hour for this panel discussion. So we will quickly dive in, but if after we finish, the question for the panelists, and you do have some questions, please proceed and send it in the chat box, and then those questions will be forwarded to me, and then I'll be, giving them back to the panelists for them to answer, if we do have time to cover most of those questions you'll be sending. So going to the panelists, maybe I will go to Naweed first, and just, it's in regard to the education barriers that we have, in our different countries or, place that we are based in. So Naweed, what do you think are the needs of refugee children and youth with regard to the education services, as you experience in Indonesia right there?
Yeah, thank you very much, Darius, for giving me the floor. Hi, everyone. Actually, continues to my colleague's speech in APNOR, I'd like to add some point before going to the main point, before going to the answer, Darius. When I was in my origin country, and I had my normal life, like my basic rights and my full rights, and my house, my car, my job, and all those opportunities that a normal person, a citizen, has it. Then I had a friend, or a friend of mine was working for UNHCR in outside of my origin country, and we had a call sometime. He was insisting, like, he was just sharing some tragic stories about refugees and asylum seekers. And he was telling me that you may feel them the time that you may just walk with your shoes. But I didn't know about that. What was he mean on that time? Then, so I became refugee myself. Then just I seek asylum. And finally, just I could feel what is going on. And since 6 years, I'm in Indonesia and just I was seeking asylum. Recently, just the UNHCR calls me a refugee, but I don't know if I am or not because I didn't pass the RSD, to be honest. Just to come to the answer for what are the needs of refugee children and youth. Actually, I just note some points and I'd like to read that to avoid wasting your time, guys. In Indonesia, unfortunately, based on the rules and regulations, refugees are not allowed to go to local schools, universities, or to go to work. Based on the needs of refugees community in area, on February 2017, I, with a group of refugees and asylum seekers here in Bogor city of Indonesia, established an education institution called Hope Learning Center. Since then, we try our best to provide basic education for the kids and youth, but with zero supportive sources. During these 5 years, we couldn't launch a fundraising because we have no license to do these activities in Indonesia. And cause of not having financial supports is still we do not have the basic equipment to run the center similar to a local school. Still, we are in need of curriculum, stationery for the kids, whiteboards, markers, internet fee, electricity fee, practical equipments of science for the students. This is the first time that APNOR has decided to run this fundraising in order to empower education for those who have not access to the right of official educations. For the refugees and displaced people, since COVID-19, we have switched our virtual classes into online virtual classes. But as this pandemic affected on the world's education system, it brought more challenge for the refugees and particularly on our education service. Our teachers are refugees and they teach the kids in volunteer base. But some of them are not having access to internet from home. Some of them are not having smartphones even to run their classes. I have talked with too many families whose kids are studying in Hope Learning Center. Most of them are suffering of not having internet at home. Then we have managed to move their kids into our other students' houses who are living in their neighbor to use their internet during their online classes. Then we realized that most of the families who have more than one children, two, three, four, in one family, but they have only one smartphone, which is belong to the father or mother of that family, and they can provide that device for one of their kids only at the same time, and so on. So we have too many challenges here. Just I pointed to a few. To conclude and make it short, the refugee children and youth with regard to education in Indonesia are in need of internet devices, stationery, curriculum, and other school staff, which is a need for any school and education center. That was the points that I have noticed. Darius, thank you very much. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you, Naweed. The the needs are really really real and then urgent actually to be satisfied. But yeah, I think we hope that through this event and through this way to raise awareness about it, slowly we will get some solutions to some of those needs. I will move on to Hayso. Hayso, what is your take on this? What do you have to contribute in terms of the needs? currently on the ground, as you know.
Thank you very much, Darius, and also the opportunity to be sharing my experiences working with the refugees in Thailand, especially in the border regions. And currently there are 7 refugee camps along the Thai-Burma border, and many of which has been existing for more than 30 years. And personally, I myself graduated from refugee camp, did my high school, and I can say, based on my experiences until now, I found that the most basic need can be provided to students and young people in a refugee camp is to meet their basic requirements, such as school teaching materials and classroom materials. These are some very basic needs that they require. And of course, in the camps, since the students don't have the opportunity to continue their study outside the camp, and this has become a very challenging factors for their future. And many of those questions about their future after their high school. And we were able to set up the junior colleges in the camps from our own institutions that we run. And of course, we do still have challenges because this is not recognized by the states and university outside the camp. And that's why we see most students finishing higher secondary of a junior college won't have any opportunity to continue their studies. And even though we know that there are opportunities outside the camp, but they are not relevant for them, they are not applicable for them, because this requires legal document to get into university outside the camp. And it also requires financial support to get into university outside the camp. And in scholarships program, it's always required to have legal document in which refugee in the camp do not possess. And that's why it is a great barrier for them. Even if they wish to continue their studies, they have no opportunity at all. And another important factor which I recognize is lack of the livelihood opportunity. And like I mentioned, refugee camp in Thailand is a confined area. They are not allowed to go outside the camp. And going outside the camp is considered as illegal, and they can be arrested anytime. And that's why they don't have the opportunity to go out and work legally. And that's why many refugees, apart from youth, risking their life to go off and being arrested. And this has been for long, for many, many years. And we don't want to see that. We want to see them to go out with legal process so that they be alone to be employed and earn their livelihood as a normal persons. And this is something is still missing in many, many refugee youth and students in the camp. And I'm saying this because in Thai refugee camp and in Thailand and Burma border, the highest refugee populations are youth and students. And this is more than half of the refugee populations. And they are very, very important, and they can contribute to society in many ways. They can be constructive instrument to society in many ways, given the fact that they are given opportunity and the right to work and study as other normal persons. So I can feel and I can sense, as our colleague has mentioned, that these barriers and challenges are almost the same in different contexts, and of course in Thailand. And I think this is important that we need to address these issues. And because, like I mentioned, refugee camps in Thailand has this for decades and not just a year or a week or a month. Thank you very much, Darius.
Thank you so much. This is really good to hear the situation right there in the Thai-Burma border. I will just move on to Isack right now. And Isack, any point you have to supplement the question on the need for the refugee challenge and youth, and the refugee children and youth in regard to the education? Yeah. Isack, can you hear me?
Yeah, Dario, can you hear me?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me on the floor. Really, it is a pleasure for me to speak today, like raise exactly what the refugee need is here in Malaysia. As we know, Malaysia is not a signatory country of 1951 Convention with its protocol of 1967, where refugees give us the right to. However, refugees are not allowed to enroll in a formal education. So, however, still there is a chance that the refugees can learn education. So, with the support of the with the UNHCR, we are running a learning center where it's being benefited by the refugees, but still we are lack of operational costs, and also the other major thing is that because of once the children reached or finished the primary level heading to secondary school, most of the time they always ask a question is which is after which is this the transcription is accredited or not? So this is one of the main challenges is the certificates, which is not officially not recognized either here in Malaysia or even once they go back to home. So the other thing is like I would like to rate point here is like that the refugees are always not have the major issues problem, which that they cannot enroll in other schools where also other universities. Also, they are not mostly of them they don't work illegally. So everyone in the family, including the children, has to take whatever irregular low-paid works that they can find. That is why the challenge that we always have here in the country, where most of the refugee children always drop out the schools due to the in need for the family or whatever they need for personal things. And in that time, however, or moreover, so most of the refugees always like that most of the refugee children always stays at home where like there is not like equivalent or like a place where they can really continue run for the universities. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Isaac. I will give it to Mohammed right now. Mohammed from Cox's Bazar to give his take opinion on this or any situation right there on the ground, as you know, regarding the children and youth education. Mohammed, can you hear me, please?
Hi everyone, this is Muhammad Nowkhim from Rohingya refugee camp, Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh.
Yeah.
I would like to talk about the education of Rohingya refugee camp, Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. First of all, I would like to thank the APNOR for giving me a chance to share the challenges of Rohingya in the camp, Bangladesh. We are university-aged ourselves. We desperate to continue our own formal study. We observed that initiations needed in the camp to train a large number of teachers capable of instructing using the MEME curriculum as well as international military. Every community wants to educate their own children, but our is no expectation. Our Rohingya young generation are growing up without any sort of education in the refugee camp. Every child and youth deserve an equal opportunity like the others across the world. We're Rohingya genocide survivors. We have been consulting with the education sector who are working in the refugee camp, but they are not trying to give us the opportunity to attend for the middle school and high school. There is no middle school and high school in our Rohingya refugee camp. Every school, there are some learning center. In the learning center, they have some basic steps, mostly child-friendly space and primary level, which are not like Myanmar curriculum. Our community thought that our community would not live to develop our society and community with the provided curriculum. The curriculum is made by their own selves, with their NGO, so that we need to have an opportunity to study also higher level and middle school student in the camp. We are hoping that we can get the opportunity if international community try to promote our Rohingya future generation who would be future of frontier. As everybody tell, knowledge is the frontier of future. We are the most persecuted person in the world. We have been facing different kind of violence since over 50 years. This is because of lack of education. Our education has been gradually discriminated by Myanmar government. As we heard and learned, education is the human being. Education is for all human being, according UDHR, Universal Declaration Human Right. Why not for Rohingya young generation in the camp? There are so many high school students in the camp, at least 500 middle school students and 200 middle school and both high school students. But no one is planning for our education and thinking in the last 3 years. In the camp level education, NGO and INGO are setting up many informal schools where our children are not willing to go because they hire unqualified teachers, and this is not effective for our children. So parents avoid sending their children. They spend their time in playing. And you need to follow the curriculum which we already learned in Myanmar. There are so many Rohingya teachers who have enough experience in teaching in Myanmar. Some of them are government official teachers who have served under the Ministry of Education in Myanmar. We also observe that part of the genocide is the immediate effect of violence, killing, torture, but at least this can be short term. I feel that our entire community is lost in access to education, and this will be complete the genocide in long time. I would like to all of you, I would like to ask one question to all of you. What will become the children and youth deny education over the years? If we see people are going, people, youth, women are going to Malaysia and other places, this is because there is nothing for them, particularly for the women. International NGO, government agency, UN agency, doing nothing for the education in the Rohingya refugee camp. I would like I would like to also highlight one more thing. They are not also concerned with the refugee and also not included in decision making. There are so many young people who are creating different kind of movies, arts in the camp, but there is no one who come to appreciate them. There are so many young talent dying in the camp. We need the international support to nurture our Rohingya talents. We need to empower our women by providing educational access. There are one more thing barriers in our refugee camp. Not only UNICEF, but also educational partner NGO are not trying to give us the formal education system in the camp. That's why our community and also civil society groups are trying to educate our young children because they cannot see the future of Rohingya because the young generation are totally destroying here. That's why people are establishing the home-based education. Even our shelter are small. We are trying to educate our young generation whose lives are totally destroyed in the camp. But there is no one who come to appreciate and who come to support to the friendliest to our private sectors. We have been establishing nearly 20 private sector in the whole camp, but without any support. So I would like to request to all of them and also to all of the international community to support us by providing educational access, which we are seeking with the Myanmar curriculum, which we would already learn in Myanmar, because we hope that we must go one day to our homeland. This is not our country, so that we need the curriculum which we already learn in Myanmar. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. This is really brilliant and straight to the point, and thank you so much for sharing this with all of us here. We will move on to Nibras for the next point in terms of the needs. Again, still the same question, but what is the situation as Nibras, and also very important for us to keep it a little bit quite straight to the point and brief, so that we have more time later to maybe welcome other questions So yeah.
Okay. Hi all. Thank you, Darius. I'll try my best to keep it short. Hi everyone. My name is Nibras Rahbe, and I am a Syrian refugee woman from Iraq. I have migrated to Australia for a better life and took on a risk journey like many other refugees. For many of us today, we truly find APNOR as an important network in Asia region where we refugees are able to use this platform as a way to collaborate, partner, and share knowledge in an ongoing manner. And today's launch of Education Empower Refugees campaign is another important work of which we refugee communities across Asia countries have put together, and hope through the support of colleagues and friends like you can reach our objectives, which Najeeba has outlined at the start of the webinar. To me, the education is one of the strengths for the community resilience that is important for each individual's school communities to develop capacities to be able to maintain safe, relevant, equitable education for all children and youth. Education is fundamentally protective. Failure to provide education will not only kick away a ladder to higher, but also other countless benefits. Education protects, empower, and enlightens for refugees, youth, and children to give them knowledge and skills to be productive, fulfilling, and independent lives, gives them a chance to learn about themselves and in the world, while striving to rebuild their lives and communities. We have heard from our APNOR colleagues around barriers and challenges, but it's important to also acknowledge the work led by refugee-led organizations to respond to these challenges. It is important for us refugee-led organizations to be seen as a real actors rather than beneficiaries. We want to be held organized of refugees, especially those in the camps who have worked to find a real solution to complex challenges. Is the greatest tool that humanitarian organization capitalize on to achieve sustainable solution to give hope to refugees. Despite being through a lot and having a lot or nothing to live on, around the world have created productive life by establishing schools, businesses that have increased access to education, enhanced sustainable livelihood in their communities, and even contributed to the economy of the host countries. As a refugee response system have increasingly failed to find solutions for refugees, there has been growth and development of the refugee-led organization and initiatives. In the absence of a comprehensive global response to the refugee crisis, refugees, both men and women, have taken matters in their own hand, exercising their agency. Refugees around the world organized to start businesses, social enterprises, volunteer networks, radio stations, and other initiatives to empower and help their communities and themselves. There are now many good models around the world of how refugees-led organization and refugees. As the pandemic hit the world, refugees' education is what impacted the most. However, our APNOR colleagues still were able to continue some online education, keeping the refugee-led learning centers open with ongoing voluntary work, using innovative ways such as radio teaching in Cox's Bazar, or the recent establishment of APNOR Rohingya think tank group to support long-term goals by empowering to power the communities on the ground. However, most of our refugee-led initiatives are under-resourced, underfunded, and requires investment and support to continue enhance. This campaign is to showcase the good work refugee-led organizations are doing, but also seeking support to help them continue these existing projects. I would like to conclude by saying that supporting effective self-representation requires investment in time, resources, and sharing knowledge, as well as commitment to valuing different forms of knowledge and experiences. In the context of scarce resources and enormous need, making this investment can be challenged for even most well-initiated organization. Thank you, Dara.
Great. Thank you, Nibras. I will give it to Shukrullah to briefly, wrap up with this question that we have, and then we can move on to the next one. So Shukrullah, maybe about a minute or so, not more than that. Just quickly, tell us if you have any opinion on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Darius, for giving me the floor again. Actually, as I mentioned previously, that it is the education that determines the future of human being. And the more you study, and the more you can be useful and effective in your society. Therefore, I think it's very important that the children's or youths, and also especially girls and women, they should have access to the education from primary to the higher education. There should not be any limitation for them that we should stop them to going to the schools. There are two reasons. One is that the time is gold. When the time is past, the will never come back to the first stage. For example, if our children is missing their childhood time or opportunity, and they could not use from this opportunity to go to school, to the primary school, to the secondary school, and then when they become young, then they will not come back first to go to the school. It means when they have missed this opportunity, they will be young. Then we should take care, and we should make sure, and we should mention it in our education campaign, that the local authorities and the officials, they should pay attention to this point, which is very important, that we should not misuse, or our children should not lose or should not give up their opportunity, their childhood opportunity. So this is very important, that even the same problem for the higher education. When the children become younger, or maybe somehow they can finish their high school, but they do not have this opportunity to go to universities. When they miss their time to go to universities, and then when they become younger, or then they have lost, they have missed their opportunity, that they will not be able to be useful, or to be, I think, effective for their community. So I think that's all from my side regarding this issue.
Great. Thank you, Shukrullah. We will just move on to the next question that we have for the panel discussion today, and it's about the barriers, the key barriers to education for refugee girls and adolescent girls, because we know that it's very important, for no matter how hard the situation is, children education, or girl education is also one of the priority or things that we should actually really focus on allocating resources to, which actually is not the case in many of our different communities within the refugee community. So please let's make it a little short and straight to the point again. So I will bring it back to Hayso, if you can hear me. What are the key barriers, the key barrier to educations for refugee girls and adolescent girls, in maybe within the work or the knowledge you have? Thank you.
Thank you, Darius. As I mentioned earlier, the highest populations in the camps comprises of the young people, and that's also included young women and girls. And in the camps, we experience that most children, and especially young girls, are unaccompanied by their parents when they come to refugee camp. They usually rely on their relative or stay in the boarding house when they have no relative, and except they have to be looked after by the guardian. So for those young girls, they need extra protections. And of course, we do have civil society, community-based organizations supporting them to make sure that they are safe living in the camp, and putting them in the boarding house where they can be supported with their basic need and able to go to school. But we also concerned that they can be exploited anytime if their life is not safe. And that's why I think this is a very important issue that we need to raise, to make sure that the society, the organizations and the community organizations supporting this program need to be supported, need to be funded financially, so that they have the capacity to provide basic assistance to to the young girls and young women living in the refugee camp. And I also want to highlight another important thing is because when it has to do with safety, we know that it is not safe even for a boy or girl to stay at home without parents. And in refugee camp, as we experience, and many young children usually stay without their parents, or their parents are going out and working outside. So leaving them alone is not safe. And that's why I say this problem, this challenges is vicious and needs to be looked at from different angles, from livelihood to education and to protection issues. And that's why I want to highlight that we need to continue to support community organizations supporting and providing safety and basic need for those women and girls, to make sure that they have opportunity to go to school and able to learn in a safe and protective environment. Thank you very much, Darius.
Great, thank you, Hayso. We will just give it to Naweed, and then Naweed, do you have any point on this? Yeah, briefly, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Darius. Actually, for this question, the girls who are coming to enroll in an education center in Indonesia here, I mean to refugee education center, the girls and the ladies are coming mostly from the village or from the towns, where they haven't had the basic rights of education. Like they didn't have the chance to educate over there in the origin country because of the war, the persecution, discrimination, and injustice. So they don't have those basic rights. That's why when they just flee the country and they arrive to a host country like Indonesia, then there is opportunity for them to join to a refugee education center. Then they want to join, and they feel shy to start or to join to the primary school while their age is higher than other students in that same class. So that's why, but still their interest pushed them to join to the center. But we try to facilitate somehow the field to have those ladies and girls who are coming in a separate class to teach them English first, because their native is not English. And after being ready to enroll in a school curriculum, then we provide the same curriculum like other students, like we do for the boys, for those girls as well, but with the separate class, because some of them are not willing to join to the same class while their classmates are, for example, teenagers, while their age is higher than 20. So that's why we just did two of our class to run by that way. But it's still, when we want to just make the field a little bit wider for such kind of environment, it's still the school and the center is in need of more school staff to run those kind of classes. Yeah, that's all. Thank you, Darius.
Thank you so much, supplementing on that. Isack, if you are with us, could you please take the floor and maybe elaborate a little bit again, briefly? Yeah, 1 minute. That would be great.
Thank you, Dario, for having me again on the floor. The key barriers for refugee girls, youth, and adults mostly is the age gap or age gaps, and the second thing is the language barrier. And the third thing is culture and traditional value. Most of the refugees, mainly for the adolescents, girls, one is the time they arrive here, like their age is already the age of either it is like upper primary or like secondary age. So the language of the learning centers that we use, we teach, or they took classes always in English, and then it is very difficult for them to have or to run or to copy whatever we teach in these learning centers. So that is one of the main challenges that the refugee girls always drop out from the school. And also the other thing is the traditional issue. Most of the refugees girls always stop at the age of 12 or 13 school due to the family need, because of the family sees that the girl has no value in front of them. They always like try to send to work instead of going to school. And because of sometimes you cannot stop this because of the family need a support from other side because of, and this is one issue. The other thing is there are girls, those always want to continue their education, but still when there's come to the language barrier, and we don't have lack of vocational time in schools where like we can let them girls go and then join. Not only the girls, but also the boys also have the same problem in terms of key of education barriers that they always have. And also in terms of that, as the lack of financial ability always on the other side. So that is what I want to say for.
Okay, great. Thank you, Isack. We'll give it to Mohammed now. Mohammed, could you hear me? Mohammed?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Thank you.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead, Mohammed. Thank you.
Hello?
Yes, hello. Yeah, Mohammed, we can hear you. Yeah, just give it a try. If it's network problem, maybe we can come back to you later. Could you try to speak, let's see? Right, let's move on to Nibras and then we'll come back to you, Mohammed, again. So Nibras, you can take the floor now and then maybe elaborate a little bit briefly, on this education barrier.
Hello?
Yeah, Nibras, go ahead first. Mohammed, you can, move in later. Okay, so Nibras, okay, let's move on to Shukrullah. Shukrullah, can you hear me? Yep. Shukrullah, are you there?
Yes. Am I audible?
We can go back to Mohammed afterward. Okay.
Am I audible, Mr. Darius?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So thank you so much for giving me floor. I would like to mention regarding the barriers on the education in India. Number one, I think it is legal document that mostly refugees are facing here in India. Refugees, youth, and the children are also girls that are allowed to get admission in the government universities. Somehow when they are graduated from the high school, because mostly I think it is in NIOS, when they are finishing NIOS school, and then they are not able to get admission in the university, which is a very big challenges. When they are going to university, especially to the government university, they are not accepting the refugee cards. And they're asking for the identity card, which is Aadhaar card, that refugees are not allowed to have this Aadhaar card. So this is a very big problem that I hope that this refugee campaign, that we should advocate on this issue, that we should, the UNICEF, I think official, they should be in touch with the Ministry of Education authorities. They should discuss regarding the issues. I think they should give some more values and with regards to the refugee cards. Those who have refugee cards, at least they should be able to get admission in the universities, that they should be able to go to universities and they should study and they should develop themselves. These are problems, but and the other problem I think it is the economy. Economic problem is very, I think, very important because the parents, they're not allowed officially to work, I think, in India because they are refugees, they're not allowed to work. When somebody is not allowed to work, and then how they are able to support their families and their children, their girls, support financially to go to the schools or go to universities, because when they go to school, when they go to university, they need extra expenses. This is a very big challenge that we are facing here in India. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, Shukrullah. Mohammed, could you hear me now?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah, go ahead, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for giving me second chance to share about the education barrier. Yeah, for the children in our refugee camp, for the children to set up some formal school with the Myanmar syllabus, which we already demanding since 2017 after fleeing from Myanmar to Bangladesh. The second one is to promote home-based education for both male and female with the Myanmar curriculum. The third one is teacher is not very much qualified, who are hired by UNICEF and other learning centers which have been established with their own curriculum. But we need the teacher who can teach the children and adolescents as well. The fourth one is the certificate. Certificate should be guaranteed class by class, because if we repatriated to Myanmar from Bangladesh to Myanmar, then we have to show the certificate of which class we have already learned in Bangladesh, then we can get chance to others. For the youth, there is no middle school and high school in the entire refugee camp, so that there must need to set up some secondary and high school. The second one for the youth is should give chance to who have been completed the higher education. We should have to attend the chance to the university or college. The third one is to provide short courses like computer training, skill development, leadership, documentary training, peace building training, refresher training, and so on. And also there are some barriers refugee girl and education. There is no formal school for both girls and adolescent girls with the safety and security. Here in Bangladesh, Rohingya parents' mind has been changed because of many reasons, such as limited space, no hopes, no income source, fewer job opportunity, especially for proper education and bad environment. The second one is parents cannot manage all the children in their small shelter. They have different kind of challenges to stay in the small shelter. Before, Rohingya parents, girls were set above that they would get the education in the camp, but it didn't happen. There is no education for them, and also there is no choice for them. As we said always, there are two types of things in the world. One is the human, another one is the women. Another one is the animal. Animal have no choice, but human have choice. But right now we have no choice. We are like become the animal because due to lack of education. The fourth one, we think international community have to give up the opportunity to understand life and to be decide what is good or what is bad for our entire life by giving the education opportunity.
Okay.
The fourth one is
okay, yeah, quickly, a few more seconds.
If you see the people,
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, please.
Yeah.
In the camp, international community should prioritize in three things. The first one is to help the private sector, which is led by Rohingya community in the camp, with material and incentive to run continuously. The second one is to help for building more school in the camp. The third one is should promote community-based education center with Myanmar curriculum. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mohammed. This your point actually lead to the last question that I have in the list before I go to the question from the participants. You know, we mentioned a lot about what is the difficulties or problems and needs on the ground and so on. But again, it will also be great for us to actually address, you know, what are the policy priorities that we think, you know, that would be, you know, like regarding education for refugees, children and youth. I mean, what could be done and so on. So we can elaborate a little bit on that. So I would just, you know, go back to Naweed quickly. If you have anything in terms of, you know, policy priority, do you think that could work or could be, you know, suggested in terms of education needs or education, please go ahead and yeah, we will
I think
wrap it up from there. Yeah, thank you.
it, thank you so much. Thank you so much. The first priority is to help the private school, which have been running by the community, is the first priority for us. The second one is they promote the home-based education for women and also men. The third one is to give chance the youth to attend the university.
Okay. Cool. Okay, great. Thank you. This is very straight to the point and brave, and I like that. Well done. Thank you. And we just give it to her. So if yeah, just see if there's any other points, you know, maybe different from what Naweed has just mentioned.
Yes, thank you, Darius. The refugee children and youth are equipped with talent and balance like other children in the world, but the right of education is stolen from them. What we prioritize to concentrate on is to advocate and raise their voice for getting back the basic right of education. At Hope Learning Center, we try our best to collect the standard curriculum and the latest updated knowledge in order to share with them because everybody knows, the students knows themselves that we may not provide an official non-result sheet or certificate for them here at Hope Learning Center as we don't have the permit to do that. But what we are focusing is to make the kids ready mentally and intellectually so they can be able to join some school equal to his level once they got resettlement. Beside the school curriculum, we have prioritized to apply sport programs, arts, empowering self skills for the students. And we have volunteers in the refugee community who are experienced and willing to teach the kids those skills and talents and arts, but unfortunately there is no equipment to run those programs. So still it is in our plan. Thank you, Darius.
Thank you, Naweed. Yeah. So and now we move to Hayso. Hayso, do you have any other point to, you know, add to what Mohammed and Naweed have just mentioned?
Thank you, Darius. I think this is very important because without the policy, it is very difficult to move ahead. And from my context and experience, I think there are 2 points that I want to highlight here. The first one is giving the permissions for refugee to be able to access to the internet officially. I'm saying this because in the camp, using internet, setting an internet in the school is not permitted. And I think this limits opportunity for students who wanted to learn through online program or read resources through online program. And I think this is very important because they don't have opportunity to go out and study in the first place. And if we had that policy, given the opportunity to be able to access to use internet officially in refugee camp, that would open up opportunity for them at least. This could be one of the options. And another things I want to highlight, as I mentioned, is that the student who wanted to continue their first study outside the camp need to be considered, especially the refugee, so that they will be having an opportunity like any other, provided, of course, they are qualified and as I mentioned, that in most scholarship programs, they require legal documents and of course financial support. And it has become a great barrier. Even if they're qualified, they are not able to do that. And that's I think we will have to work together to link institutions, even if we know that they have quota or funding for especially for refugees, but still they are not able to have opportunity because they lack legal document. And I think this is important because giving the opportunity for them, we open up their future and have them pave the way for their future so that they can contribute to the society more. So this is the two key issues that I want to highlight instead of policy recommendations. Thank you very much, Darren.
Thank you. Sure. We give it to Isack right now. Isack, yes.
Yeah. Okay, let me thank you very much, Daria, again. So, really, for my experience being a refugee for a long time, and I would like to raise three main issues here that refugees could support in order to assist their lives. The first one is we need to have an adoption policy or an integration policy for inclusion and allowance to refugee people for self-resilience, autonomy, and empower them with the work opportunities and better education. Their capabilities will be strengthening, and they can contribute to the community they adapted or the place or the country that they are living in. The other point is expanding educational training. So we need to have whether it's globally or internationally or locally, including with the UNHCR, with its partners and also on NGOs, to expand educational training for the youth refugees, mainly for the girls and mainly for the women and girls, because most of them they're ignorant, so they need to have prioritized educational training for them. The third thing is we need to have adequate funding for the schools, and also to have accredited certificates where the refugee children can have a better future wherever they go, whether they go back to home or whether they reside at the country. So that is what I want to say. These 3 points.
Okay. Great, great. Thank you so much, Isack. And to wrap it up, I will just give it to Shukrullah to finish these questions, these 3 questions that we have for the panel before we go into the participants' questions. So yeah, Shukrullah.
Darius, can I?
Yes.
Darius, can I add up something into that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you can go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I had some internet connection problems. That's why I couldn't answer you before. Okay, I would like just to say that this, for me, the school is a second chance for the refugees. Failing them by not giving them the opportunities to build the skills and knowledge they need to invest in their future. We need to invest in their education or pay the price for the next generations of children condemned to grow up unable to live independently, find work, and to be able to contribute to their communities. So yeah, that's all I wanted to add up to it, actually, just the importance of having education and teaching the next generations of children.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for your input.
I would like to make.
Yeah, I will give it to Shukrullah. Any points, or if anything that you want to mention that is already mentioned, then we can move on. But yeah, I just give you the floor as well. Shukrullah, can you hear me? Nope. So yeah, maybe I will just move on and then maybe have him again later. So we had actually many questions from the panel. I mean, from the participants. It's quite few questions. So hopefully we can cover most of them. So the first one, actually, I would just throw it. It goes to Naweed. Someone want to understand how you supported refugees' education when they had to be isolated, or was there enough support from UNHCR and other NGOs? So now the work that you do right there in Indonesia. So just maybe quickly, briefly, maybe 30 seconds to a minute, let us know if you have anything to supplement on that question that is being asked. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for bringing up the question. Actually, in Indonesia, Indonesia is not a significant of the 1951 convention as well. So that's why there's no right for refugees to educate here or to go to school or to have a job. UNHCR uh, is not supporting refugees in Indonesia. I mean, education centers. Uh, just the Indonesia government as well. There's no support from the government and also from the UNHCR. But what we are doing here without any support, I mean any official or popular address support, a group of refugees or just establish the education center. Then we we used to start this by nothing. By passage of time, we could find some links, individual people who are just coming to visit the students and the community. Then some of them just donated some second computers. Some of them donated some second chairs. For example, some of them just donated black and white curriculum for the kids. Then we try to collect them all and to just use them for the students. From UNHCR, during these 5 years age of Hope Learning Center in Indonesia, we received 2 or 3 times face mask and hand sanitizer during COVID-19 during these couple of years. But in education base, we didn't receive any support from UNHCR. So that's a kind of like volunteer job by refugees for refugees and small donation of individual supporters. Thank you.
Please, Darius, can you ask everybody to be a little bit short? I mean, briefly, because we have very short time. So
Yeah.
to make sure everyone could be able to speak, please.
Great. So we may cover 2 or 3 more, maybe at most, if of questions before we wrap it up. But the next one comes from Ali. So the previous question to Naweed was from Elizabeth, just to mention it. So thank you, Elizabeth, for asking that question. The next one comes from Ali. So the question goes to Hayso, I guess. Yeah. So the Ali said, I want to hear from Hayso about the education challenge. What is education challenge is for girls and women. What has been that education for girls and women? Okay, maybe let me just read it. I wanted to paraphrase it, but I want to hear from Hayso Thailand and Mohammed from Cox's Bazar. Education is challenge for all, but for girls and women has been more difficult as they face sexual gender-based violence and have had extra responsibilities during the pandemic. So what measures do you take to support and empower the education of girls? So particularly girls, briefly, is there anything, specifically that you do to support girls and girls education, particularly in this pandemic situation that we are in? So please go ahead, Hayso. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Darius, and also thank you for the questions. And I did mention earlier in the camps that we need special protection specific for young women and girls. And in refugee camp in Thailand context, we do have the equal opportunity and for boys and girls, where they're able to go to school together and till their high school and if they wish till their junior college that we operate in refugee camp. But as I did mention earlier, I do have concerns, especially for girls who are not accompanied by their parents or their guardian and staying in refugee camp, because when they go to school and of course they are staying with their friends and colleagues and classmates. But if they are staying at home without their guardian or with their parents, or staying in the body house where the classmates are going to school, and that's where I have concerns for that, because usually in refugee camp they need to be looked after by someone who is older than to them, because there are cases that we see that basically for young women, when it's come to their self-protections, there is nothing they can do. And at the same time, we see that there are young women who are staying in the camp and risking their life to go out and looking for a job and basically for their livelihood. And there is no protections for them. And of course, generally, this also applies to the refugee in general. So I think, like I mentioned, there are civil society and community organizations supporting them to make sure that they are being looked after. And of course, with the camp leadership, the camp's leader, we have to build a body house for children who are not accompanied by their parents or relatives and living in the refugee camp for their education. And this program needs to be strengthened and need to be supported to make sure that this allow them to stay in refugee camp without any fear, and so that they are protected and so that they have the opportunity to be able to continue their study as long as they live in the refugee camp. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Hayso. We have one question that is addressed to the LGBTQ plus community. So maybe.
Sorry, Darius, I'm jumping in. What I actually meant is that it's actually a privilege that we've got Eliana.
Yes.
From New Zealand, from the LGBTQI community, and I thought it's important to give her a chance to make a response to this question as well, since it's on women and girls. And maybe if we can hear from Eliana, just to have a quick intervention on this question, please.
Oh, hello everyone. Yeah, so I mean, what's been said is something that I would say that it affects many communities. It's often symmetrically, I will say, but there are obviously these asymmetries that we've been mentioned many times here, which is on gender-based. So a woman often are very affected by like a lack of access or proper education. Okay. So this situation can become even worse when there are more intersections. There are more elements on that identity. So in particular, LGBTQI refugees experience not only problems in accessing education, but even those slim chances of accessing education become very complex for them, because obviously the stigma and everything surrounding their identity becomes a challenge. So I want to give an example of something that during the pandemic, we trying to implement, when I say we, it's just a group of different organizations, LGBTIQ refugee-led organizations. And this one was by ORAM in Kakuma, which is it's a refugee camp in Kenya, and it's a refugee camp with a lot of LGBTIQ refugees, mainly from Uganda, Sudan, Somalia, South Sudan, and Burundi. So we have been having always problems in this refugee camp, particularly for the level of violence that some refugees experience in this camp. But we've been trying always, like, not only just sort of like leave this issue there, but we find a ways to empower these LGBTQI refugees into having a more meaningful like future. And one of these things that during the pandemic happened was that there was a program that it was created by civil society, which is an entrepreneur training program. And in this program, we teach or educate these refugees into manufacturing of soaps, cosmetic products, and gel for sanitization for COVID. Okay. And this project was running beautifully and wonderfully. And we were like doing all these different aspects on like teaching them about how to set up a business and how to learn about finances and education, marketing, and all these wonderful, wonderful skills. However, and I'm sorry if I break my voice, but 5 days ago, they came into this camp and they burned this camp, and they burned 2 of the refugees there, and one of these refugees died. And it is very sad to see these things happening. Like, this is the level of hate that I'm trying to illustrate. And it's very sad because you're trying to see like this magic and trying to improve the lives of people. We're doing this really hard work, and then they kill our people, you know. They burn him alive, and he was just 18. He was just, I mean, just a kid. And yeah, I mean, you guys might even see this news is being shared by the UNHCR, but I mean, you know, this is something that is just horrendous, and the other person's still battling for his life. And I hope he will survive. But I mean, those are some of the obstacles that are visible and are affecting me personally very bad. And I'm sure that the same happening in Kenya, it might be happening in Thailand, in Cox's Bazar, in many other refugee camps. Sometimes this violence is invisible, sometimes it's very visible, like in this case. And this is a horrendous obstacle that goes beyond just accessing education. It's just actually accessing safety so you can educate yourself, which is something that many of us cannot even give for granted, even in a refugee camp. So yeah, that's what I wanted to share. And yeah, I'm happy to collaborate and to just keep some of the experiences that I have, especially in the Global South, in South America, that we've been trying to run similar programs, especially for trans women in Central America, and in the regions of Peru and Ecuador with the Venezuelan and Colombian trans women. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Eliana. It's really inspiring, and thank you again for sharing this with all of us here. We really appreciate that. And there will be a way forward together, you know, to collaborate or anything. So we'll be in touch with APNOR. The last 2 questions, actually, I will just throw it to Najeeba, so for her to answer, and you know, wrap it up, you know, for this kind of question session. First one, it's been said that Najeeba has mentioned about partnership and collaboration among refugee-led organizations and wider stakeholders. So how do you define a good partnership that engage meaningful refugee participation? So that's the first one. But the second one to it is that it's from Mimi. So she said, she or he, I don't know who, but yeah, say that we are all in the same boat. So what are ways forward? So this is also a way actually to kind of, you know, project this whole discussion into, you know, something, you know, further. So please, Najeeba, you go ahead with the 2 questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darius. And I have to say you're doing a fabulous and great moderation job. It's not easy when you're actually moderating such a big panel speakers. I also would like to say how sorry and horrible we feel with what Eliana just actually shared with us. Definitely it is something that we can resonate, and let's talk more about these issues, Eliana. And I think these are the stories that needs to be shared much more broadly, and we need to have much more conversation around, you know, how do we support much more, you know, challenging issues as you have just described today. But it was really good to have you, Eliana, today. And Eliana has been also an active member of APNOR from New Zealand. She was an active member of the New Zealand consultation, which we just undertook through APNOR about a few weeks ago. And it was good to hear from her today as well. Just in terms of the question that Darius mentioned, I think it's a very good question. Partnership is, in my perception, partnership is still something that we haven't been able to come up with good models, especially with refugee-led initiatives. I think if we look around and to see to what extent do we have governments, donors actually calling for INGOs to partner with refugee-led initiatives, then the evidence is very little. I think it was during the Global Refugee Forum that the Asia Pacific Network of Refugees, along with the Global Refugee-led Network, we called on a pledge named Refugee Participation Pledge. And through this pledge, what we are actually envisioning and hoping to achieve is to explore good partnership models amongst refugee-led initiatives and wider stakeholders. And in my view, a good partnership would be defined as the one that could facilitate, preparedness for refugees. A good partnership would seek refugees' engagement beyond consultation. Most often we hear from refugees that their engagement has been tokenistic, and in order to prevent that tokenistic engagement is to move away and go beyond consultation. How do we involve them in decision-making and policy discussion? How do we facilitate preparedness and engage them in conversations that they're ready and they're invested and resourced? And I think it's going to take us time. Most often refugee-led organizations are telling us that when we talk about partnership, they are involved towards the end of the project rather than being the people who are consulted from the beginning, from the start, or designing the project. They really want to be held accountable. They want to be looked as equal actors to the solution. And in order to do that, then that means we have to actually involve them right from the beginning. That means from the time that we are actually looking at grants application, from the time that we are actually designing the projects, going all the way to the implementation and evaluation. And I think that would be called a good partnership. And I think we're still far away because refugee-led initiatives, it's still a new phenomenon. For so many of our actors around the world, that we still haven't been able to define what meaningful refugee participation could look like. I think it is just till now that we've been able to cover why and what refugee participation could be, but we're still struggling to come and support how meaningful refugee participation could be enacted. How do we create an enabling environment where refugees are looked as equal actors? And this is something that, APNOR and again with other refugee-led initiatives like GRN in the world, we are hoping to achieve. And this is something that again requires a two-way dialogue. Refugee-led initiatives to talk with the wider international stakeholders, and that includes donors. How do we engage private sector in this conversation? How do we bring much more flexibility to our grants application? How do we bring more awareness to our donors in bringing much more aid and support directly to refugee-led organizations? I think if we start believing that refugees are co-developers, if we believe that refugees are the first and the last responders to any crisis, I think partnership becomes much more easier. And the pandemic was a clear testimony that, while all the international actors were struggling to withdraw from the fields due to the pandemic, it was really those local-led solutions, it was those refugee-led organizations on the ground that really responded to the challenges of the pandemic and are still responding. And we've heard from our colleagues in APNOR. I'm not going to talk more on that. And on the question of Mimi on ways forward, I think that's what Hafsar is going to talk on. And I'll probably let that for Hafsar to conclude and wrap up. Thank you, Darius.
Thank you. Yeah, so we give it to, so come on. Normally, we should have Nibras to discuss on the role of refugee-led organization right now. So I'll give it to Nibras to.
Nibras was able to share her comments as part of the panel with us. So which was good, and that means because we have literally no time left, so that means we have to go to wrap up and conclusion to Hafsar, and Nibras was able to share along the panel discussion with us.
Okay.
Thanks, Darius.
So so just for your information, for all of those who sent questions that we haven't answered, we will still have the question, and then if needs be, we can maybe answer those and then post them, by email.
Email, yes.
So you will receive it through your email. So thank you so much for those great questions. So giving it back to Hafsar to go for the wrap up. So Hafsar, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Darius. And yeah, my name is Hafsar. I am a former Rohingya refugee based in Auckland, New Zealand, and I do wear a couple of hats under my advocacy journey. But today I'm wearing the head of APNOR as an APNOR steering committee. Thank you all for joining the campaign, and thank you, amazing, fabulous panelists and speakers. And listening to your all very fruitful conversation, it just brings me back to 10 years ago. Before I go to that 10 years ago, I want to acknowledge my colleague and my dear friends, Eliana, for bringing in this very important topic of how the marginalized and oppressed community within the marginalized and oppressed community has been always overlooked and oftentimes excluded from many different things. And it has to be always looked into, and it has to be always taken into consideration. Thank you for that. And going back to how this campaign bring me back 10 years ago of my journey of advocacy in Malaysia for education. So listening to all of you guys, I was thinking about 10 years ago back then in Malaysia, how we have been starting this advocacy journey for the refugee kids, for the refugee children to get access to education, which is a very basic human right for every children. It has been like a long journey. So today, when I sit and listen to this panel and campaign, it's make me reflect that unfortunately, we haven't come so far yet. Unfortunately, the changes are not there yet. And also, although we have, when I look at how many internally forcibly displaced people, as in August 2020, we have 79.5 million. And we also have 30 to 34 million younger people under 18. We are speaking about 38 to 48% of younger generation, refugee, displaced people and asylum seekers without proper education access. So that makes me wonder, if we are excluding these kids, this younger generation from this access to education, whether we acknowledge or we don't acknowledge it, they are part of our society. Whatever impact they have, it's gonna impact us. So if we look at over the decades, we have seen history has repeated again and again, and we have failed our younger refugee generation again and again. So if today, if we decide we want to make a positive changes, and I believe it is not let alone only one party's responsibility, it is the shared responsibility of the civil society, NGOs, individuals, and all parties. So if we are looking at also the meaningful participation that we are talking about at the Global Refugee Forum, at the GRC, many pledges. If we want to have the real meaningful participation of refugees on the table, not just merely presenting just for one occasion or one off, or just for only sharing the stories and you're gone. If we really truly want them to participate meaningfully, it can only happen through education. That the meaningful participation of refugee has to happen in a way that they are on the table. They are also contributing and informing the policymakers and the donors and the NGOs, the civil society, that not only with the stories and the painful experience that we have, but also the theories and frameworks that works best for the refugees based on the best interest of the refugees and all displaced people. So in order to make it happen, all of you have the capacity to do it in many possible ways, whether you are as an individual, whether you are as an organization, whether you are the civil society, whether you are NGOs, you all have the capacity to do so. So I would like to tell you how you can get involved in the work that we do and in this campaign. Please join our social media platform through Twitter and Facebook to share and amplify the refugee voices, because we will be sharing many refugee youth and women video and podcasts on those channels. And from this campaign, we are seeking all stakeholders to show expression of interest in joining of the Refugee Education Special Interest Group. We're also asking for your kind donation to reach our campaign target goal. We'll be sharing with you the donation link via the email. And we have refugee participation pledge, which we announced along with Global Refugee-led Network, and ask you to join and become a signatory. And lastly, an important point is this campaign, through this campaign, we hope that we will be able to raise more awareness for donors to engage directly with the refugee-led organization, and also to be flexible to their grants, because many refugee-led organizations and groups right now, because they don't have legal status, And it's really difficult for them if the donors are not being flexible. And thank you so much. And over to you, Najeeba.
Thank you very much, Hafsar. We are actually over time, and I do want to apologize for going over 2 hours. As you can see, we have very passionate speakers coming from different parts of the Asia, and there is so much to be said. It is the first webinar as a way to launch the campaign, Education Empowers Refugees. And once again, I would like to thank everyone for giving your time, especially for those that are celebrating the month of Ramadan. And I'm sure for my colleagues from Cox's Bazar, it is probably iftar or over iftar, and in some other countries the same. So again, a very sincere thank from APNOR team for joining us. I just want to echo again, please join us and help us to make this campaign successful. Take part in the Education Empowers Refugees social media platform. Join the Refugee in Education Interest Group. If you know of any other organizations or stakeholders or NGOs or donors or whoever, educational academy institutions, universities that would like to help and support the campaign, please spread the word and tell them to join the Refugee Education Interest Group. Help us reach our donation goal. We are going to forward an email soon after this webinar and tell you the way that you can actually send your donations. And lastly, partner projects with our refugee-led initiatives. For those that are interested to get in touch with us further, there is an email that was forwarded by Fabian in the chat box, apnor.refugees@gmail.com. And we are looking forward to hear from you. And we will be, again, sharing a recording of this webinar for you to spread and share with your other networks and colleagues. Thank you very much to our speakers, to my APNOR dear colleagues, to Darius for his excellent moderation, to speakers Nibras, Naweed, Shukrullah, Isack, Hayso, and to our APNOR coordinator Masooma, and also Mohammed from Cox's Bazar, and to our communication officer who was able to actually support and put this together, Fergus, and all the other colleagues that really have helped us to bring APNOR to where it is today. We couldn't have done it without the support of this beautiful colleagues like Hafsar and Iliana from New Zealand, and many others that I probably cannot mention them here due to the shortage of time. And I also would like to apologize for those who have raised their hands and have wanted to make interventions and probably put questions or comments. Due to the shortage of time, we are not allowed to do that as we are going to end the webinar. But please, let's continue this dialogue, let's continue this conversation, send us email, get in touch with Masooma, get in touch with us, get in touch with our country focal points, and let them know how you can, make APNOR a better organization, a better network, representative of refugee-led organizations. And if you have ideas to support and make this campaign become much more successful, please get in touch with us and send us your suggestions. Once again, thank you very much. Have a good night, good evening, and good afternoon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.